Welcome to Stories of Success about Rod Stewart. Today we will talk about singer-songwriter's music career. Sir Roderick David Stewart is a British rock and pop singer, songwriter, and record producer. Born and raised in London, he is of Scottish and English ancestry. He was knighted in the 2016 Birthday Honours for services to music and charity. Stewart is one of the best-selling music artists of all time, having sold over 250 million records worldwide. He has had 10 number 1 albums and 31 top 10 singles in the UK, 6 of which reached number 1. Stewart's early albums were a fusion of rock, folk music, soul music, and R&B. His third album, 1971's Every Picture Tells a Story, was his breakthrough, topping the charts in UK, US, Canada and Australia. After a handful more UK top 10 hits, Stewart announced the breakup of the Faces in 1975. His next few singles were ballads with Sailing off the 1975 UK and Australian number 1 album, Atlantic Crossing. Footloose and Fancy Free featured the major hit, You're in My Heart, as well as the rocker, Hot Legs. Blondes Have More Fun and It's Disco-Tinged, Da Ya Think I'm Sexy, both went to number 1 in Canada, Australia and the US. After a disco and new wave period in the late 1970s and early 1980s, Stewart's music turned to a soft rock, middle-of-the-road style. Most of his albums reached the top 10 in the UK, Germany and Sweden, but faring less well in the US. In 1993, he collaborated with Bryan Adams and Sting on the power ballad, All for Love, which went to number 1 in many countries. In the early 2000s, he released a series of successful albums interpreting the Great American Songbook. Stewart worked in the family shop and as a newspaper delivery boy. He then worked briefly as a labourer for Highgate Cemetery. In 1961 he went to Denmark Street with the Raiders and got a singing audition with well-known record producer Joe Meek. Stewart began listening to British and American topical folk artists such as Ewan MacColl, Alex Campbell, Woody Guthrie, Ramblin' Jack Elliott, and especially Daryl Adams. In 1962 he had his first serious relationship with London art student Susanna Boffey. He moved to a bed-sit in Muswell Hill to be near her. Long John Baldry and the All-Stars invited Stewart to sit in with the group in January 1964. Baldry offered Stewart a job for £35 a week, after securing the approval of Stewart's mother. While still with Baldry, Stewart embarked on a simultaneous solo career. He was sometimes added to the billing as Rod the Mod Stewart, the nickname coming from his dandyish style of grooming and dress. Steampacket was conceived as a white soul revue, analogous to the Ike and Tina Turner revue, with multiple vocalists and styles ranging from jazz to R&B to blues. Rod Stewart was the vocalist and songwriter for the Beck Group from 1967 to 1969. The group was formed by Jeff Beck, Ronnie Wood and Carmine Appice. Stewart left the group in July 1969, following Wood's departure. An Old Raincoat Won't Ever Let You Down became Stewart's first solo album in 1969. It established the template for his solo sound, a heartfelt mixture of folk, rock, and country blues, inclusive of a British working-class sensibility. The backing band on the album included Ron Wood, Ian McLagan, Keith Emerson and guitarists Martin Pugh and Martin Quittenton. Faces released their debut album First Step in early 1970 with a rock and roll style similar to the Rolling Stones. While the album did better in the UK than in the US, the Faces quickly earned a strong live following. Stewart released his second album, Gasoline Alley, that autumn. Stewart's approach was similar to his first album and mandolin was introduced into the sound. He then launched a US tour with the Faces. Stewart sang guest vocals for the Australian group Python Lee Jackson on In a Broken Dream, recorded in April 1969 but not released until 1970. His payment was a set of seat covers for his car. It was re-released in 1972 to become a worldwide hit. Stewart's 1971 solo album Every Picture Tells a Story made him a household name when the B-side of his minor hit Reason to Believe, Maggie May, started receiving radio play. The album and the single occupied the #1 chart position simultaneously in the UK, US, Canada and Australia, a chart first. The Faces toured extensively in 1972 with growing tension in the band over Stewart's solo career enjoying more success than the band's. Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols regarded the Faces highly and named them as a main influence on the British punk rock movement. For the body of his early solo work, Stewart earned tremendous critical praise. Rolling Stone's 1980 Illustrated History of Rock and Roll includes this in its Stewart entry. Rarely has a singer had as full and unique a talent as Rod Stewart. Rarely has anyone betrayed his talent so completely. Once the most compassionate presence in music, he has become a bilious self-parody, and sells more records than ever writer who offered profound lyricism and fabulous self-deprecating humor, teller of tall tales and honest heartbreaker. He had an unmatched eye for the tiny details around which lives turn, shatter, and reform, and a voice to make those details indelible. Were defined by two special qualities: warmth, which was redemptive, and modesty, which was liberating. If ever any rocker chose the role of everyman and lived up to it, it was Rod Stewart. The Faces released their final album Ooh La La, which reached #1 in the UK and #21 in the US in 1973. The band toured Australasia, Japan, Europe and the UK in 1974 to support the album and the single Paul Hall Richard. During the recording of the album, the rift between Stewart and the rest of the Faces grew further, as Stewart didn't participate until 2 weeks into the sessions, and then complained that some songs were in the wrong key for him. The week the album came out, he did all he could to scuttle it and told anyone who would listen how useless it was. In late 1974, Stewart released his Smiler album. In Britain, it reached #1, and the single Farewell, #7. It was his last original album for Mercury Records. After the release of the double album compilation The Best of Rod Stewart, he switched to Warner Bros. Records and remained with them throughout the vast majority of his career. In 1975, Faces toured the US twice, with Ronnie Wood having released his second solo album in 1975 and also having joined the Rolling Stones, as well as Stewart's own burgeoning solo career. It became impossible to maintain the Faces as a viable band. Stewart announced their breakup at the end of the year. In 1975, Stewart moved to Los Angeles. He released the Atlantic Crossing album for his new record company, using producer Tom Dowd and a different sound based on the Muscle Shoals rhythm section. In appearance, Stewart's look had evolved to include a glam element, including makeup and spandex clothes. Stewart scored another UK #1 and US #1 single with Do Ya Think I'm Sexy, which was a crossover hit reaching #5 on the Billboard Black charts due to its disco sound. In August 1981, MTV was launched in the US with several of Stewart's videos in heavy rotation. Later in 1981, Stewart added further elements of new wave and synthpop to his sound for the Tonight I'm Yours album. Stewart had 4 US top 10 singles between 1982 and 1988. Young Turks, Some Guys Have All the Luck, Infatuation, and Love Touch, Baby Jane, reached #14 in 1983, but went to #1 in the UK, his final chart-topping single there to date. In January 1985, Stewart performed to a large audience at the Rock in Rio festival in Rio de Janeiro. In 1988, Stewart returned with Out of Order, produced by Duran Duran's Andy Taylor and by Bernard Edwards of Chic. Lost in You, Forever Young, Crazy About Her, and My Heart Can't Tell You No, from that album were all top 15 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 and mainstream rock charts. In 1989 he received a Grammy Award nomination for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance for the song. Stewart's version of the Tom Waits song, Downtown Train, went to number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1990. This song was taken from a 4-CD compilation set called Storyteller, The Complete Anthology, 1964 to 1990. Released in 1991, the Vagabond Heart album continued Stewart's renewal and inspiration. The lead single, It Takes Two, with Tina Turner, was released in 1990 in advance of the full album's release, and reached number 5 on the UK charts, but did not chart in the US. The follow-up songs from Vagabond Heart both reached the Billboard Hot 100 in 1991, with Rhythm of My Heart peaking at number 5 and The Motown Song peaking at number 10. At the 1993 Brit Awards in London, Stewart picked up the prize for Outstanding Contribution to Music. In 1993, Stewart recorded All for Love with Sting and Bryan Adams for the soundtrack to the movie The Three Musketeers. Also in 1993, he reunited with Ronnie Wood to record an MTV Unplugged special that included Handbags and Gladrags, Cut Across Shorty, and 4 selections from Every Picture Tells a Story. Stewart was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1994. 1995 to 2001, New Ventures and Record Labels. By the early 1990s, Stewart had mostly abandoned creating his own material, saying that he was not a natural songwriter. In 1995, Stewart released a spanner in the works containing a single written by Tom Petty, Leave Virginia Alone. The latter half of the 1990s was not as commercially successful, though the 1996 album If We Fall in Love Tonight reached number 8 in the UK. In 2000, Stewart left Warner Bros. And moved to Atlantic Records, another division of Warner Music Group. In 2001, he released Human: The Story. By 2002, Stewart had sold over 100 million records during his career. He concentrated on singing 1930s and 1940s pop standards from the Great American Songbook with great popular success. These albums have been released on Clive Davis's J Records label and have seen Stewart enjoy album sales equal to the 1970s. Stewart performed Handbags and Gladrags at the Party at the Palace held at Buckingham Palace Garden, a concert which celebrated the Golden Jubilee of Elizabeth II and featured stars from 5 decades of music. The first album from the Songbook series, It Had to Be You, The Great American Songbook, reached number 4 on the US album chart, number 8 in the UK and number 10 in Canada when released in late 2002. A musical called Tonight's the Night, featuring many of Stewart's songs, opened the 7th of November 2003 at London's Victoria Palace Theatre. In 2004, Stewart reunited with Ronnie Wood for concerts of Faces material. A Rod Stewart and the Faces Best of album, Changing Faces, reached the top 20 of the UK album charts. 5 Guys Walk Into a Bar, a Faces box set compilation, was released. On the 1st of July 2007, Stewart performed at the Concert for Diana held at Wembley Stadium, London, an event which celebrated the life of Princess Diana almost 10 years after her death. He performed Sailing, Baby Jane, and Maggie May. On the 12th of December, he performed for the first time at the Royal Variety Performance at the London Coliseum in front of HRH Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, singing another Cat Stevens number, Father and Son, and Bonnie Tyler's song, It's a Heartache. On the 22nd of December 2006, Stewart hosted the 8th annual A Home for the Holidays special on CBS at 8 p.m. On the 20th of May 2009, Stewart performed Maggie May on the grand finale of American Idol Season 8. On 2 July 2009, Stewart performed his only UK date that year at Home Park, Plymouth. On the 29th of September 2009, a 4-CD, 65-track compilation entitled Rod Stewart Sessions 1971 to 1998 was released. Stewart has also mentioned plans for a compilation of covers of soul classics, the possible release of another edition of the Great American Songbook album and a country covers album. 2011-2012, Christmas album and autobiography. In 2011, Stewart performed with Stevie Nicks on their Heart and Soul tour. Stewart signed on to a 2-year residency at the Coliseum at Caesars Palace, Las Vegas, commencing on the 24th of August. In October 2012, Stewart's autobiography titled Rod, the autobiography was released. In February 2013, Stewart was nominated for a Canadian Juno Award in the International Album of the Year category for his album Merry Christmas, Baby. Stewart was the 10th best-selling artist in Canada in the year 2012 according to year-end sales data from Nielsen SoundScan Canada. In May 2013, Stewart released Time, a rock album of his own original material. It marked a return to songwriting after what Stewart termed a dark period of 20 years. The album entered the UK Albums Chart at number 1, setting a new British record for the longest gap between chart-topping albums by an artist. On the 23rd of June 2015, Stewart announced the release of a new studio album, Another Country. It was made available for pre-order and was released on the 23rd of October 2015. The video for the first single, Love is available on his Vevo account. Stewart recorded vocals with Joe Walsh on the Frankie Miller album Frankie Miller's Double Take, which was released on the 30th of September 2016. He sang his cover of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band as Sgt. Pepper for Beat Bugs Episode 17B, which debuted the 18th of November 2016 on Netflix. On the 28th of September 2018, Stewart released his 30th studio album, Blood Red Roses, on Republic Records. He duets with Welsh singer Bonnie Tyler on the track Battle of the Sexes, from her 2019 studio album Between the Earth and the Stars. Stewart collaborated with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra for the release of You're in My Heart in November 2019. This was a story of success about Rod Stewart's music career. If you enjoyed this, make sure to subscribe and join us for more.